Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be on today. I just barely got back from a trip to Arizona, and it was really interesting because a lot of different things were coming up for team members over there, and something that I'm seeing that comes up as we progress, as we continue to move forward in our businesses and we do personal development, sometimes we get into a space where we are feeling separate from our spouse, from our kids, from people that were close to us. And so I am so excited about today's call because I'm really wanting to focus on relationships today and how to help bring people along with you without forcing, without feeling like we have to nag or have high expectations, so anything like that. But being able to, anyone on the call today, to be able to be in a space where if you are having this happen, where you feel like there's a conflict or a separation happening because you are fully engaged, you're personally growing and developing, how to bridge that gap and make everyone feel comfortable and set goals together. So the first question that I would like to pose to the mastermind today is just some experiences. Has this happened, especially the diamonds and platinums on the call? Has this happened in your journey where you have felt or had worries about, people close to you pulling away because you're improving?
Hey, Janet, are you running the dashboard, or do you need me to?
Well, I think I logged into the wrong one, so I'm pulling it up right now. But is it the ROD one or the Seth one?
The Seth one, and Alonso just raised his hand, so go ahead, Alonso.
Alonso, go ahead. Thank you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, so this is an awesome topic, so thank you for bringing that up, Janet. And we have experienced this in multiple levels when it comes to especially like the relationships that we've had that were really close. So like family members and really like the people that we originally thought would have our backs, but in the process of growing, in the process of developing and doing personal development, that it actually brought us further apart. And I love the analogy that I've been kind of using when it comes to this issue is, like, imagine that like people in a dark cave, right? And in this dark cave, someone shines a light. So you're going to have two very distinct reactions when it comes to that, and that's either they're going to be like totally like blinded by it and they hate that light, or you're going to have people that are searching for a way out, that light is going to illuminate and they're going to be gravitated towards that light. And that's basically the process that I kind of picture of like personal development and growing and developing relationships, is that you're being this light to this like dark world where you're going to have two very distinct reactions. People that are going to be like against you, like have ill intentions, talk about you, all these things, or you're going to have people that are going to be so drawn to you that you're going to be like, man, I love what you're doing, Janet. Let me know like how I can do the same thing. And that's been the process and how I kind of identify, like picture the journey when it comes to personal development and growth.
Awesome. Alonso, thank you so much. So I have a question for you as far as that goes, though. So as you start to separate and you start to see, think people that would have, that you thought were going to come along with you, or you start to feel this kind of a separation. Did you panic? Did you worry? Did you have any of those types of emotions come up, feeling like, that made you question what you were doing? Is that anything that you or Desiree ever struggled with as you were preparing and growing as you personally were growing?
I mean, it's for everyone. Everyone experiences like these types of kind of doubt and struggles, but it's only at the beginning. So like at the beginning, like kind of like when you first wake up, right? And you're first introduced to the light, like you're like, this is horrible, like I don't want to get up. But the more that you're acclimated with it, the more that you get used to it, now you're able to kind of deal with the brightness of the situation. And that's kind of been the journey that we've had, and it hasn't been easy. And again, like we want like the success, we want to be able to transfer this with like our loved ones, but they're not there. They're not ready. They're not like even open to kind of exploring that. And at first, like you're like, man, so hurt because like they don't want to join you in that journey. And at first we were thinking, is this us? Like, are we doing something wrong? Are we doing something that, is there something that we could do better? And then we finally made the transition of, this is just like what we're doing, and that's the space that they're at. That's the space that they're in, and kind of we were able to love them where they're at. And eventually, and I think it's just a matter of time where they eventually get used to that light and finally kind of approach us in a way where they're open to learning and changing.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for that, because I think if you're not aware of this, it can be a surprise to some people, and it can set you back. And so just to know that even Desiree and Alonso had that experience, that is freaking awesome. Thank you, Alonso. Lindsay, you're up. Go ahead.
And to this day, we still don't have the support of our parents, even as Blue Diamonds. So like it's ridiculous when you think about it. So it happens to the best of us. So
yeah, wow, that's amazing. Okay, Lindsay, you're up. I'd love to hear what that goes.
Hi. Listening to what Alonso says and kind of seeing where I'm at right now, I'm definitely in the thick of understanding my own value and my own light and how those changes in relationships happen. So I'm in the middle of all of that happening. But one thing that came up when you first asked that question, and it has to do with your communication and other people's expectations. And the only reason that I want to bring this up is because this is something that I've personally been struggling with so very much. And it's allowing ourselves, when we're doing personal development and we're growing as people, when we're growing, we need to accept the love that's around us that is supporting us, and be able to understand that not everyone around us is ready to accept the changes in us. And us to be okay with those relationships not growing where we are, and us to be okay and be enough in love with our own journey and our own path and our own development, that the naysayers or the people who aren't as supportive, that we can block out that white noise and only block out the bad noise and let in the good noise. For me, that's been really important, because when you're building relationships, and like where I'm at with my team right now, I'm leading a group that is all about loving accountability. And the reason why that is because so many people get lost in the steps of doTERRA and what you do for your business, that sometimes some people's love language is spending time with people and having accountability partners and things like that. And I think that that's very important, but doing it in love and learning how to have those relationships and communications that are growing along with you. So it's been, and I think that for me, accepting the growth and being able to block out the noise, but still allow the people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Totally. Oh, Lindsay, you're brilliant. I love that. So when you're blocking out the noise, but you're still loving the people, how did you make that breakthrough? Because sometimes it's really hard to still feel love when you have someone telling you that feeling like you're doing something wrong. How do you do that?
Every single day it's a struggle. And for me it is anyways, because I think that I'm approaching that point to where it's not a struggle anymore. So, like I said, I'm right in the thick of understanding that not everyone is going to get it, and not everyone is going to be able to love you the way you need to be loved and understand you and have a relationship that goes with you. So for me, it comes all back to centering yourself in your own self-worth. And that happens only through time spent inside yourself and loving yourself, because there are so many people and so much noise that's coming at you at all times, that if you aren't taking that time, is that me? I'm sorry.
You're fine.
If you aren't taking the time to remind yourself of why you're on this journey, that's why I love something I started a few months ago, is sticky note affirmations, just so I see it every single day. I've got it on my phone, and wherever we're going, I have these reminders that that it's okay if people don't understand, because I'm standing in my own worth. So it's definitely a process, and I don't know when you are going to understand, and I'm hoping maybe you can shed some light on that, when you understand that you've arrived at that point where that noise doesn't bother you, but you can still love them because they aren't where you are at this point, and that's okay. And getting to that point, my mother and my sister still, they used to tell me all the time how I was wasting my time, and they finally decided to jump in with me. The people that are surrounding you, they may not be on the same where you're at, and that's okay. So just knowing, and I think it's centering yourself and reminding yourself every single day that what you're doing is why you know why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that taking time for yourself to center yourself in that love is going to make you strong enough to be able to block out that noise.
Right. And I like what you say as well about knowing that just as much, and I think Alonso touched on this as well, knowing that there may be one person that you really, love, like a mother or, a spouse or a child or, brother or sister, people that you let into your closer inner circle that may disagree, with what you're doing, but think of all of the hundreds of other people who appreciate so much what you're doing, and kind of surrounding yourself with that instead of just focusing so much on the negative. I like that. Awesome, Lindsay. Thank you. Adam Kopp, you are unmuted.
Fantastic comments thus far. I'm going to take a bit of a different angle on it, and I think there's one thing that I've been really conscious of in sharing with our different teams wherever they are, is that some people do personal development to death, and there's a difference between personal development and self-analysis. And I think one of the key things is what I share with the team. Some people just do it just for the sake of it, and they find that it alienates them. But how I explain it to the team is I'm thinking and analyzing my reactions, my behaviors. Could I have handled that better? Did we run in line with the principles with how we said we'd run our business and ourselves? And if I mess something up, number one, I go back and fix it. And number two, then I go and seek the information I need to rectify the challenge. So I don't sit there reading things unnecessarily. Now, if people find that as a fantastic tool, but I don't just churn through books and books and books for the sake of it. Like at the moment, there's certain skill sets or certain challenges that we're up against. So I go and seek out those things, if it's communication or if it's something different. So I think you can get caught up in a bit of a trap where it's just personal development for the sake of it, and you think you're focusing on the right things, and you think just churning through books for the sake of it is actually going to help. But the part that helps is the self-reflection and analysis, where you look at the interactions, and people say, "Oh, that sounds boring and time-consuming." Well, go and live your life with unconscious for another 40 years. That sounds more challenging. And and I'm in a bit of, I think I've been watching too much Gary Vaynerchuk, so I'm in a bit of an intense state right now, so I apologize to anyone who thinks I'm being a bit intense. But the other thing is that, and Seth taught us this, and oh man, it was like winning the lottery being enrolled by that fella. But when you let your leadership or the way that you interact with your team or your spouse, and they know that you're meeting on the level and you're principle driven, they know how you're going to behave and react. Like if I'm out of line, I'll kick myself. If my team's out of line, I'll kick them. If someone else tries to mess with the team, then they have to deal with me. And this is something that Rosie said when we had Seth over last week, is we don't have to call Seth and Rod anymore because we know how they behave and what they would do in that situation. So when your team knows how you would act, like even down to the point where, and men are going to have different viewpoints on this than women are going to have, and different men are going to have different viewpoints than other guys. So, like down to if you lead by principle, and the team knows in any situation what your viewpoint's going to be on it, then they know that you're fair. And I think that realistically, hurt in relationships come from unmet expectations. So I don't expect anything of anyone. Like when I first met my wife, when we were dating or whatever you want to call it, I said to her, like, if at any point you're not happy, you don't deserve to be unhappy just out of obligation. So you have the permission to leave. And that's the way you need to be with your teams. If you come back to the 3 doors, if you picture it like a bus, and you're going from, I'm trying to think of an analogy, I don't know the state, say you're going from LA to New York and you stop off at Utah or something, and you lock those doors and you don't let people off where they feel comfortable and come back to the level where they're comfortable, then you're going to have upset and unmet expectations in relationships. So I think truth and honesty and leading by principle is critical. And our team just knows, like, I'll get one of our leaders on the phone and they'll be like, "Oh, sorry, Adam, that's a Rosie conversation." Or they'll say, "Rosie, I need to talk to Adam." Like, they just know because we don't change the way we behave, the way we interact. We lead by principle, and it creates a space where the team just knows, and then the relationships manage themselves. Do we mess up? Of course we do, but we go back and tidy it up just as quick. Now, I have no idea if that was helpful, but I just felt sort of guided to say something like that.
Yeah, that is so brilliant. I appreciate that so much, and I love how you were saying being in a space, being able to not be so rigid in what you think, that if people need to be heard, or in some way being able to open those doors and say, yeah, let's be heard. So I love that, Adam. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
So in talking more about this, I hope you all feel a bit validated in your experience. Just know that when you are personally improving, and I love how Adam brought up that, you can be reading books all day long, but something that doTERRA does is it gets you out there. Your business doesn't build until you're physically out doing things, meeting new people, doing classes, enrolling people, all of these 631 activities. And so it really is a setup for the most intense and progressive type of personal development there is. And so, like all of everyone who's commented so far, I'm so grateful for that, because it is natural for you as you are shifting and growing. I think of it like this: if you were going up an elevator and the people around you see you rising up this elevator, then there's a natural emotion or feeling like a rubber band is being stretched between you because they see you progressing. And it's natural for fears to rise. It's natural for people to feel like, are you leaving me behind? Especially if you are in a spouse or best friend or mother relationship and you're used to yo-yoing with each other. You're used to having, if you're feeling yucky, I'm feeling awesome. And then I feel yucky and you feel awesome. And you yo-yo in this sense where you get used to it. It's an actual relationship where you dump on each other, and then you dump on one person, and then you dump on the other person, and it's very comfortable because you know you have people to dump your negative on, and you yo-yo back and forth. And so no one's ever better than anybody else. No one's ever worse than anybody. You all have your hard times and your good times. And now one of you has the audacity to say, no, I think I'm going to be positive all the time, or at least try to, so that my business can flourish. I see that that's more beneficial. I feel that that's more beneficial. And then the other person feels like they're stuck there down at the bottom because, you know, they haven't been doing the same things. And so there's a natural separation that happens. And what we've been hearing so far is that that's normal. That's totally normal. And so my next question to the mastermind is to, in this process where you decide to hold the line of positivity or of a lot like what we've been talking about, the light that you carry, like Alonso says, or Lindsay, the ability to center yourself and feel love, or Adam being able to say, yeah, this is who I am now, like you're owning who you are. As you're doing that, what are some things that you can do to help that separation not be so hard, but help you both rise up and not feel the strain? Any comments or suggestions of what you've done in this situation? If you don't know how to raise your hand, go ahead and press *5*. The question is, what are some things that you have personally done as you've felt the strain happen? So an example is when you've noticed that there is straining happening, because this has been a breaking point for some people where they actually feel like shining and being your best self is dangerous for your relationship. I've actually had that happen, or leaders actually quit because they feel like it's hurting their relationship by doing the business. And so this is a big deal. This is something that we need to understand, and we need to have actual tools in place when we see it happening. Okay, we've got Cheryl Day.
Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. I'm so excited.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I didn't know if I had to be a certain rank to make a comment.
No, you're up.
So I apologize. I actually have had this happen with newer builders several times where they've got just panicked about the whole thing. And what I've done with them is work with the vision board and some mindset things and that's worked. But what's been really powerful for me has been to come from a place of love and empathy for people who are feeling that space, who are feeling that pull and that divide and that separation, and just looking at them with love and just accepting where they're at. And the way that I've worked that out in my own mind is I've read Brene Brown's Daring Greatly, and I've also studied a lot of Leslie Householder's Jackrabbit Factor and Portal to Genius and some things like that. And so coming from a place of it's a mindset thing, and hopefully at some point I'll be able to help them understand why they're processing what they're processing, where they're coming from, kind of more of a service mindset than I personally haven't been so jolted by the rejection and by the by the differences that do come up. Sometimes it can be within a marriage. Sometimes it can be, I have adult children. Sometimes it could be parent to adult children. It could be siblings, adult siblings, or we've heard parents and things like that. And so, it just varies, doesn't it?
Mhm. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, Lindsay, did you raise your hand again? Or did I forget to lower that? Did you have a comment, Lindsay?
I did. I do have a comment on
Yes.
that. Something that it reverts back to communication and clear communication, but also once you're having that communication in relationships and you see that maybe you're butting heads or you're not going where you want to go or you're feeling like you're not being supported or whatnot, actually I was talking with Rod and he helped me a lot through this, that it's okay to set up some boundaries for yourself. And it's also good for those people as well that are in the relationship for it to just, it doesn't have to stop. The relationship doesn't have to stop, but it can take a pause. And then you can come back to it once everyone is able to communicate better. And I think that helps to salvage a lot of relationships as well, is when you're communicating and you're ready to communicate instead of it being a forced issue or forcing a relationship that's not healthy for you or for that person.
Oh, I love that you just said that. Thank you, Lindsay. And that kind of goes back to what Adam was saying, and not feeling like we have to slam the door shut and say, no, you will do you will do what I think, I need or what I want. Yes, being able to feel like, okay, I can breathe right now. I can let you speak, or maybe we can separate for a minute and, not just get in the pattern of being hurt. Lindsay, that is so brilliant. Mary, you are up. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about this.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
I was on. Okay, so this is really hitting home to me because a lot of my mentorship comes from people who have been hurt, and also even spouses kind of attacking their loved ones because of this business. And so I take it, this is a very sensitive topic for me. And also I just am coming from a personal standpoint. So hitting Diamond was actually a bittersweet moment for me because even though it was a happy time, it was also a time where even my leaders were struggling to understand some things. And I found out that there was talk behind my back and people who weren't cheering for me, and it really, really hurt me. Okay, so I went through a lot of pain, a lot of growing pains, I should say, achieving ranks. I had a really good support system, so I can't really speak on a personal level from that. Thank God I had a good cheerleader in my corner, but it was a team hurt, and I had to take a step back. And luckily, I worked on personal development enough to where I didn't lash out at anger. I knew that from a lot of books that I've read and from talking to my upline, my mentor, because we talk upline, we don't talk downline. That's a really good suggestion to have. So speaking to Desiree a lot, I went through it and I talked it out her and realized, there's a lot of hurt in this world and a lot of misunderstanding. And majority of the hurt and pain that I experienced comes from people who just don't understand and draw their own conclusions and based on what was set on the table. But sometimes there are so many other factors that haven't been set on the table yet, so they don't understand. And so it's my goal to, as a leader, to sit down and really listen listen to them. I mean, this is what you do anyway, and this is what people said before in the call. It's coming from a serving mindset and a serving heart. So you just sit there and you're like, okay, help me to understand you. Like, where are you coming from with this? I understand this happened. I understand you're feeling this way from other people, and just going to the source. You know, this is not high school anymore. This is real life, and it's real relationships, and it's a sisterhood and a brotherhood, and it's like family. And if, you know, no family is perfect. So I always think of my doTERRA business as my family. So, you know, if a family member has hurt me, I go straight to them and say, hey, what's up? So there was just all open table conversations. It was never, you know, talking behind family members' backs. So we just went straight to the source and we talked it out. And I just moral of the story, I feel like if you go to the source and you have that mindset where you know that hurt people hurt people. And that person hurt, there's no way that there's going to be light coming from them anyway. So you go to that source, you sit down, and you say, yes, this happened. I understand that this is where you're coming from. Let me help you to try to understand, you know, if there's a miscommunication or if there's an assumption. You have your belief based on assumption. Let me try to clear the air. Let me try to tell you what really happened or give you some facts to help clarify it. It's all about clarification. If you make it clear on what happened, it just brings this whole entire different avenues. They're looking at you from eyes of love too, instead of hatred or anger or jealousy or pain. And you bring up those emotions and you really like, oh, hey, guess what? This happened and I still love you. I still love you. I still want to work with you. I still want the best for you, because being in that light of anger, I shouldn't say light, darkness, you actually are sabotaging yourself. And if you sabotage yourself, how are you going to grow in this business? So it's all about relationships. Being clear and truthful and honest, and if you don't project that out as a mentor, you're not going to get that back either.
Yeah. Mary, thank you so much. You totally shifted the conversation to the most beautiful space where communication really is the key. And I love how you brought up the being in a place where you can recognize that hurt people hurt people. I wrote that down because if you are feeling hurt, it's important to get yourself in a place where you're not hurt before you communicate. And that goes back to the last, I think it was Cheryl that said, Nia, maybe you need to step away for a bit before, you hash things out. Get to a place where you center yourself, so to speak, as Lindsay says, and then communication is key. I think that's where if we miss that step of communication, that's where some things can fall apart. Thank you, Mary.
And even though it may be a really hard communication, it may be really hard to talk about this, because I found out as you get more into the ranks, you're going to start to have those awkward situations where you feel like, oh, who likes confrontation? I don't at all. So it's really awkward, and it makes me feel funny, and it's again stepping outside of your comfort zone. But you're being truthful no matter what. You're speaking from your heart. So if that happens, you're in a whole different realm. You're a whole different space. And when your downline or your partners or your loved ones see that, then they're seeing you in your true self, and they're allowing themselves to become raw, to express their feelings, to get it out. And now I realize that my relationships now with my builders are so much stronger now that we've gone through that together, through the trials, that it's unbreakable. also encourage you to just be your true selves and to have those really true, raw, emotional conversations, even though it's hard. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. Melissa Guthrie, you're up.
Thank you so much. I do really appreciate everything that's been said and contributed so far. And one of the things that just came up for me, actually yesterday, I was listening to an interview with Bob Proctor. And if nobody, people don't know who Bob Proctor is, he is one of the kind of foremost leaders in the personal development industry. And his interview, this was one of the topics that came up was relationships, and sometimes as we're getting into personal development and we start to grow and we see those around us who don't seem to be growing at the rate we are, and we start to feel a bit of that gap, it's easy for us those that are growing to start to acknowledge that gap and to vocalize it and to go, well, my spouse isn't growing as fast as I am, or, my team members aren't doing personal development as much as I am, or our siblings or whoever it is that we've got relationships with, we start to acknowledge that gap, and we start to focus on what we're doing right and what they're not doing right, or whatever. And one of the things that Bob Proctor said was, he said, if you find yourself in that place of saying, well, I am growing and this person isn't, and or you're finding the things that you're doing right and the things that person's doing wrong, and it's creating a division in that relationship. He says that one of the best things that you can do is kind of a personal self-check, and he recommended, maybe time to go take a look in the mirror and realize that, everyone is on their own path. But rather than sitting and focusing on all that's wrong with that person or that person's not doing to grow, he said, in that moment, you're in negative energy. You're in a negative space. You're not growing. So it's kind of a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, almost like self-righteousness within, So what Bob Proctor said to do, he said, if you find yourself doing that, the very best thing you can do is to verbally, in your mind, or even writing down in a journal, all the positive things about that person. All the things that you appreciate about that person, all the things you're grateful for about that person, all the things that person is doing right. And he goes, do that for a week and then see where that relationship is. Do that for 2 weeks and see where that relationship is. Do that for a month and see where that relationship is. Do it for 3 months and see where that relationship is. Sometimes
my goodness.
We can actually shift. Maybe that person's still not engaged in personal development, or they're just growing at a different place than we are, but we're going to view the relationship different, and we're going to feel different about the relationship because of the internal switch we've made by acknowledging all that's good, positive, and right in that person.
Yeah, and keeping the vision of what truth is. I love that so much, and it makes me think there were specific times and still are in my journey where little thoughts will sneak into your head, especially about those that are that are close to you. Of like, my particular experience I'm thinking of is I was always in a place of like, I was taught that as far as the spiritual leader in the home, that's just that's the man's job. And so I used to always, if my husband wasn't calling us together to pray or to read scriptures, I would be like, oh, well, what's wrong with him? And this was before even doTERRA came around, that I was given the suggestion. So I second this, Melissa. It works every time, because the second that I was able to say, you know what, if I think that my higher power is working on me and helping me to grow, why would I not think that he was working on my spouse? That this is actually a flawed philosophy, this idea that in some way I could be further ahead than him. I think that there's definitely these separation moments where someone's in a bad mood and someone's in a better mood, or maybe you're both in a bad mood. But I love what you're saying is that if you're stuck in a place of feeling like the person that you're working with isn't performing as high as you would like them to be, to take a look and to change your mindset. And Melissa and I testify to that, and that has saved us many times, going to a place of humility. Thank you. Now, I'm unmuting your line. The phone number is 208-420-5887. And can you give us your name as well so I can type it in here? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Janet. This is Kayla Tate.
Yes.
So my input kind of on that question, I love this relationship-based question. It's absolutely phenomenal for all of us. I heard a man named Todd White, a super awesome evangelist, once say that we don't owe anyone an explanation. We owe them an example. And so as long as we're leading with love and encouragement, there's not a tremendous amount that we can do for that other person. They have to make their own choices in every stage of life that they're in. All our responsibility is to do is just love them where they're at. And like Steph says, like, we have the cookie, right? Like, we have the light. We have what they're wanting. We have that amazing positive attitude. We have all those great things, and they're just maybe a little bit torn on why we have that and they don't. And we just owe them an example. So just be who we are and be what we're supposed to be. And then they catch wind of that. And when they catch wind of that, oh man, not only do they grow, but our relationship grows together, and it just ends up being a phenomenal experience, right? And I know a lot of us deal with, our spouses in this kind of a realm, and I loved what you said, Janet, about just that transition and just knowing that all we can do is just be who we're supposed to be in that moment and in those situations, and just be the servant and just be the encourager and just be who we're supposed to be. Those foundational heart principles, like Adam talked about, just be who we're supposed to be. We don't owe them an explanation. We just owe them an example in who we are, and then they catch it, and they catch their identity, and they catch who they are, and then the growth just catapults from there. So, thank you, Kayla. And I will say, you are a great example of this, just so you know. Anybody knows Kayla, that is so true. Yes, go ahead.
I think I tried to raise my hand, but as the host of the call, because I opened the call, I think it stopped the recording.
Oh.
Sorry, so
You're right.
I'm just going to speak up. Yeah, so, what we're all talking about on the call is actually the reason why people think that building doTERRA is hard. The activities of building doTERRA actually aren't that hard when you really consider what it is that we do. Like we call people, we see who's open to learning about oils. We teach classes. We find people that are interested in building the business. We help them succeed, by doing the same things that we just did. All of that's very simple. But this is where it actually becomes difficult. And, I remember when I've had different leaders on my team that are now some of the best of friends, but would call me up and say, I don't know what to do about so-and-so. They're driving me up the wall. And there's all these things like this that happen in the process. But the thing is that this is where I think it really helps to have some principles like Adam was talking about earlier. He was mentioning that he leads his team with principles, because if the principles don't have to change, right? You need to, as a leader, we need to find principles that govern the way that we lead and follow, for that matter. And for example, here's a principle that I've tried to use throughout building doTERRA. One, it's strong to admit when wrong. It's not a weakness; it's a strength. And so if I have the opportunity to admit that I was wrong, that I should do that. That's a strength. Another thing that I've learned is just the make allowances for individual differences of others. So make allowances that other people are going to think differently, behave differently, those types of things. Another principle that I've always tried to live is assume the very best. I think that many times things are happening in the business and we assume the worst in people. Well, they must have done this because of this, or they're doing this because of that. And we tend to go to the very worst assumption. And yet we always assume the very best of ourselves. Like, well, I mean, even when we're doing things that are really stupid, we say stuff like, well, I'm doing it for their own best interest, right? And so I had this one guy in the last company before I joined doTERRA, or when I was actually considering building it. This guy had he did some things where he ended up taking like my previous company where he did terrible things. And I remember him saying, but I saved the company. And I'm like, right, but you screwed me in the process. And he goes, you should be thanking me. And I'm like, well, how could I thank you for this? I'm like, you took the company from me. And he goes, it's like if you woke up from an operation and I amputated your leg, and you're mad at me for amputating my leg when I saved your life. And then my response was, well, yeah, but I had a hangnail. I didn't want you to cut my leg off, And so anyway, so it's kind of this interesting thing. But my point with that is that I just learned that people tend to assume the very best in their own actions, even if their very best is very hurtful, and they assume the worst in others. I think if we start to assume the best, like when people do things, even when they do things that are so offensive to us, or when they hurt us deeply, to just assume something like what I think Mary said earlier, where hurt people, and so there's a reason why people act the way that they do. And I swear, the older I get in life, the more forgiving I become of things that I used to find reprehensible. Like people that, even people who have been in abusive situations or have abused others, I immediately think they've been abused. And my heart is filled with a lot of compassion for them. And one other thing I just want to share, and then I'll kind of, end this, or my comment anyway, and that is, so since I've had this vision of creating 1,000 diamonds on my team, I've been pondering this a lot. How do you bring this about? And I've thought about all the great leaders in the world and how they create movements like this and how they sustain those movements. Like, how do they maintain what, instead of like a lot of times there's a lot of hype and hope and people get caught up in that. And then it fades with time and they can't sustain the movement. And I'm realizing that love is truly the greatest way to do this. And in fact, it may be the only way to do it. And so creating an atmosphere of love where you, like we've talked about, you loving people where they're at. Love is probably the greatest force on earth. I remember it was the love of my mother when I was a kid that pulled me through things that helped me make critical decisions at the right time in my life, because I knew I had a mom that loved me, right? And that love has the ability to pierce through so many of these different problems that we're all having and save us all from making really detrimental mistakes. And so I would say that as you're dealing with these different things in your business, make sure that before you act, ask yourself this question: is the motivation behind what I'm about to do love? And if it is, it typically works out well. You can have very hard conversations with people, but if they know that you're coming from a position of love, it seems like the message is always received well. If you are coming at it from a position of frustration, of where you've just, you've had it, lack of patience, righteous indignation, all these different types of things, right? Then just be prepared for the backlash that's going to come from that. And so as you grow your team, just try to think, okay, am I doing this out of love or any other type of motivation? And, I mean, it reminds me of like when Paul, you know, the Apostle Paul in the Bible, when he said, he's describing these amazing gifts that people have, and he said faith, hope, and charity, or faith, hope, and love. And he goes, and the greatest of all of these is love. And it's more powerful than having a great vision. It's more powerful than having great faith and belief and going out and trying to accomplish amazing things and all these things. The best is, the most powerful force is, can you love the people on your team? And if you can, then you can get through all of this stuff.
Oh, perfect. Seth, thank you so much. I couldn't have ended the call in any better way, because that is the truth of the matter. And if you are someone out there that you have just had some kind of a blow up, or a kid screaming, or a downline argument, or a best friend type of argument, if this is you, that you have just gone through something rocky like this, and you have for any moment questioned that moving forward and progressing, improving yourself and creating something amazing is possibly not the right thing for you to do, because how could it possibly create a conflict with my spouse or my best friend? And if you have any doubt in your mind that it's not worth it, you remember what Seth just said, and decide that it's worth becoming that kind of a person. The hurt does not govern you. Fear does not govern you. You don't avoid things because you're afraid of being rejected or afraid of being hurt. You move forward in correct principles with love, and if it stirs up some mucky water, you purify it with love. You move through it, because the mucky waters are still mucky whether you stir them up or not. So I challenge you that if this is something you've dealt with, to progress through. I am going to give you some oil recommendations if this is something you're going through right now, or if you know somebody that is. First of all, I would suggest juniper berry. Juniper berry is an oil of helping of releasing fears, and not just releasing fears, but moving through, facing fears. That moment where things didn't quite turn out, or you're getting pushback from people you love, and you fear that in some way you're separating from them, or that somehow you're doing something wrong. Juniper berry on your heart will help to just calm the waters. Yes, you stirred up some muck, but calm yourself, calm your own waters, so that you can find the love. Juniper berry on your heart. The next I would suggest is lavender on your throat, just like Mary was suggesting. Communication is key. You can get to a really good place where you feel okay, but until you're able to communicate and get on a good place with the other person that was involved, there's gonna be other experiences that need to bring it up. So lavender on the throat, juniper berry on the heart, lavender on the throat. And then the last thing is, if you have a Roman chamomile, I would highly suggest using it. And that Roman chamomile, put it on your third eye and on top of your head. Roman chamomile is the oil of being able to stand in your space, center yourself, and realize that it is totally worth every single thing you go through in this experience to become your highest and best self, that you can look through and see the world with love and not fear or hurt or anything like that. It is worth it, you guys. It's worth it to be your highest and best self, and to constantly be progressing, constantly becoming new through your experiences, learning new things, growing through them. If you don't have Roman chamomile, lime is another suggestion, help you to see the zest and the life and the beauty in the situation. If you use that one, make sure you use it with a carrier oil and don't go out in the sun for a day, I think it is. If there's corrections, go ahead and correct me, but just if the sun is hot. But I highly suggest this, recommend this. It's important to have those crucial conversations and rise. Don't be afraid to rise, because your the people that are meant to will rise with you. Don't fear. And so thank you guys all for being on the call today, for sharing this time with us, and have a great week.